Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
It's hats on the hill as we head to Washington, D.C. for NCBA's annual legislative conference. We'll take you inside this event and explain why it's critical to the success of the beef industry.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen with host Kevin Oxner.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Oxner. Each spring, cattlemen and women from around the country travel to Washington, D.C. for the annual NCBA Legislative Conference. It's a chance to meet face-to-face with policymakers and deliver a unified message about the issues and regulations that can impact the beef industry. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brian Baxter has more on this important event.
It was hats on the hill as hundreds of cattle producers traveled to Washington, D.C. to make sure their voices are heard by decision makers in our nation's capital.
Every spring, cattlemen and cattlewomen from across the nation come together in Washington to really talk to our legislators, to visit our senators, our congressmen, to talk to people, the regulatory agencies about priorities and issues that are important to NCBA members.
The three-day event gives cattlemen and women an opportunity to share their personal stories, while lawmakers and their staff get a chance to hear firsthand how their decisions impact ranchers nationwide.
We're trying to meet with as many of our legislators and regulators as we can. We had a really good session yesterday, met with several of our legislators, but I can see how the decisions these folks are making are critical to the long-term viability of my operation. I see the value in being able to explain these issues to them, and as they move forward and work on those, I know that trickles back down to my bottom line.
Being able to be in that office and to know multiple members in that office and to be able to pick up a phone and shoot an email and know you've got a relationship face to face makes your message so much more positive and impactful.
They want to hear from people in their district, so when an issue comes before the House or before the Senate, we want to have that relationship built, so if it affects the beef business or the cattle business, that we're the first call that member staff makes.
Participants advocating on behalf of the beef industry get a little taste of what every day is like for the NCBA staff in Washington. It's often an eye-opening experience for first-time attendees.
It's always so fun to see that feedback from producers that have that first-time experience. They just come home wowed. You know, they want to come back. It's a trip that usually they say is their favorite because seeing NCBA in action, seeing the Ohio Cattlemen's Association making those congressional connections, they just love it.
We can sit back there and we can read about NCBA's priorities or the priorities of farmers and ranchers in the newspaper, but coming up here, visiting with their congressmen, seeing the whole process really brings back home how important working together, how important that state association, that state and national partnership is.
It's real easy to see that NCBA is effective, has a presence in D.C., is respected, is looked to as a knowledgeable source of information. It makes me feel really good that I'm making a good investment when I'm a member of NCBA. It also makes me feel really good about telling a neighbor, you know, you really ought to be a member of NCBA. Here's what they're doing.
A strong showing of cattlemen and women in Washington is vital to the success of the beef industry. It's critical that lawmakers and regulators understand how their decisions can impact the bottom line of the nation's cattle producers.
If you have the opportunity, I can't encourage you enough to take the time and take the effort to come up here and build that relationship and see your government and your DC staff of NCBA in action.
It's important for everybody to come here to be able to have that presence and to know that the breadth of Congress, you know, there's cattlemen in each corner of the country that they need to be paying attention to.
From the Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C., I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
For policymakers, the Legislative Conference is a clear demonstration of how those of us in the beef industry can work together to deliver a message about the issues that could make or break our livelihood. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Kate Maher had a chance to talk with one of those lawmakers.
Thanks, Kevin. We're here talking today with Senator Joni Ernst from the great state of Iowa. Senator, thank you for your time.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. Thanks.
First of all, our thoughts and prayers are with all those affected by the devastating flooding in the Midwest. We've heard about situations in Nebraska. What are you seeing in Iowa?
Well, it is widespread devastation and very heartbreaking. These are folks I've worked with on other flood events as well, and unfortunately we see that again. Iowa overall has about $1.6 billion of damage so far assessed. So a lot of recovery efforts, of course, for our cattlemen. We have a lot of hog operators that are suffering as well, and our farmers. They are going to have a long recovery process.
Definitely an impact on agriculture production in those states. What relief efforts are available for some of these producers?
Well, there, of course, are the traditional means going through FEMA, and FEMA is on site and working with a number of those individuals and families, various operations. And then Senator Chuck Grassley and I, of course, are trying to work on grain as well. We had a lot of grain that was destroyed in the floodwaters. So we want to make sure that they're able to reach out, work with the government agencies, again, that are on site, get their information in, do it soon.
Well, thanks to you and Senator Grassley for your support. Switching gears a little bit, let's talk about the Green New Deal. Of course, it was blocked in the Senate, and you've been a vocal opponent of the bill. What concerns you about such things?
Well, it is very pie in the sky and not realistic. When you have a plan that would virtually eliminate all fossil fuels within a decade, we're not prepared for that as a country. I think it's extremely unrealistic. There's a lot about social inequality, trying to make it equal. There's just a lot of things in this bill that, you know, are great to strive for, but certainly won't happen within a decade as you look at the fossil fuel situation. So I know there's a talk about cows and cattle in this particular bill, and we need to eliminate certain gas emissions that would come from cattle. It's absurd. It's absurd. So I am a vocal opponent of it. Again, there are some great things to strive for in the bill, but simply it's not going to happen in a decade.
The issue of climate change, though, isn't going away anytime soon. What does it mean for agriculture and for agriculture groups to be involved in the discussion?
I think it is very important, and we do understand that the climate is changing. I think everyone agrees with that premise, but how we then affect that is very important as part of that discussion. So we always want a clean environment. We want clean soil and water and air, and of course our farmers and ranchers are the best conservationists ever. They are the original conservationists. So striving towards ways that we can keep a clean environment will be very important, but I think it's important that we take that on as individuals or as families. We shouldn't have overwhelming government mandates that will destroy our economy. Iowa is a great example of this. We do utilize a lot of electricity from wind energy. We have our solar fields, we have biofuels, you name it. We are doing our best to protect the environment.
You're right, and farmers and ranchers are the best stewards of our natural resources, for sure. Speaking of farmers and ranchers, how important is it for cattle producers to be here on Capitol Hill talking to their representatives about their needs?
It is very, very important, and I love those face-to-face interactions. I love to hear from the cattlemen. They tell me what their challenges are and what their opportunities are, too. So if there is something good in the federal government, I get to hear what's working for them. And if it's not working, they are not shy. So they will tell me what needs to be corrected, and certainly I'm happy to jump on board and do what we can to make sure that the cattlemen are getting a fair shake with the federal government.
Wonderful. Well, Senator, thank you for your support of America's beef producers and agriculture, and thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Coming to you from Senator Joni Ernst's office, and Kevin, we'll send it back to you.
This year's legislative conference focused both on immediate policy concerns as well as on longer-term issues that could impact the beef business. One of those issues is the Dietary Guidelines. Every 5 years, the federal government updates the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, and the work for 2020 is already underway. Danielle Beck, Senior Director of Government Affairs, explains why it's important for NCBA to closely monitor this process.
The Dietary Guidelines are a set of evidence-based food and beverage standards that are intended to help Americans choose an overall healthy diet. They're updated and published once every 5 years jointly between the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and Human Services. And they're based on a set of recommendations provided by a panel of scientific experts known as the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and Human Services have already taken several important steps to ensure that the mistakes made in 2015 don't happen again. The first meeting took place last month, and 4 more meetings are already scheduled to take place over the course of the next year. Beef producers work hard each and every day to produce a safe, affordable, and nutritious protein. We at NCBA recognize that, and we're armed to communicate your message along with the scientific data supporting beef's role in a healthy diet as the 2020 process plays out. Please stay tuned for more information because we will be submitting written comments, we'll be testifying in person at the DGAC meetings, and we may call on our producers to weigh in as well.
Now, if you'd like to stay up to date on all the key issues and events from DC, one way is by becoming a member of NCBA. If you're an NCBA member, you'll get the Beltway Beef newsletter, a weekly update straight from Washington that gives valuable insights on the key policy initiatives that may impact your business. To get the Beltway Beef newsletter and more, join NCBA by calling 1-866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll take you inside the Public Lands Council meeting in Washington and discuss some of the issues facing public lands ranchers. We'll be right back.
At Case IH, we believe it's our job to provide you with solutions. That's why our Farmall and Maxim tractors, as well as our tools and attachments, are designed with you in mind. From mowing to baling to loading and more, we're here to help turn your to-dos into to-dones. At Case IH, we'll keep your days running smoothly with equipment that's durable, versatile, and highly efficient. No wonder farmers are more loyal to Case IH than any other brand. Visit your local dealer or go to caseih.com/livestock for more.
Saddle up and make your way to Denver, Colorado for the 2019 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting. This is your chance to stay up to date on beef industry trends and policies. Meet with industry leaders and your fellow cattlemen and women. Plus, you'll get insights on hot topics at the Issues Forums. Mark your calendar for the 2019 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, July 29th to August 1st in Denver. Details at ncba.org.
NCBA wasn't the only organization gathering in Washington. The Public Lands Council also held its legislative conference there as well. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Lane Nordland has a look at the PLC meeting and some of the key issues that were discussed.
Recently, cattle and sheep producers gathered in Washington, D.C. for the Public Lands Council's Spring Legislative Conference. They talked about issues impacting Western public lands ranchers with elected officials on Capitol Hill.
It's kind of crunch time in any administration. We're midway through. We have a lot of regulatory work underway right now as an industry. We're working on some of our foundational issues, things like the National Environmental Policy Act, the Endangered Species Act, grazing regs. We're working on trying to make progress on long-standing problems like wild horses. We're seeing things like sage grouse sort of come to a resolution point where we'll see how well we did in promulgating new rules on some of those issues. So I think what we saw today in a lot of our committee meetings and what we're hearing, the kind of the theme of this week is it's the 2-minute drill, getting across the finish line and making sure we secure some of these critical industry priorities during this administration. I think everybody's focused on those goals. And of course, it's always an opportunity to hear about those local issues that folks are dealing with, that our affiliates are dealing with, whether it's bison in Montana and the ever-present threat of the American Prairie Reserve, or whether it's vacant allotments in Wyoming and the Forest Service failing to get NEPA done quickly enough. You know, it's an interesting time to compare all of those and see some common ground. And what was encouraging for me is a lot of the work we're doing at a 30,000-foot level on those high-level regulatory issues is going to lend a lot of support to solving the downstream issues we're seeing on the ground. that's good news for me as an exec, because it tells me that we're focusing on the right key policy areas in order to make some progress for our members and affiliates.
With all the issues that impact public lands ranchers, PLC president and Oregon rancher Bob Skinner knows how important it is for the industry to have a year-round voice in Washington, D.C.
It's very important to know that PLC has really good recognition, especially right now. With the Department of Interior, with the Department of Agriculture, everybody is working with us. It's just a good feeling to know that they're really trying to listen to what we want to do. We are representing the 22,000 permittees in the West, and they're cognizant of that fact, and therefore we have quite a bit of clout.
The PLC Legislative Conference is also a way that public lands ranchers can educate others in agriculture about the importance of the multi-use of public lands.
Obviously, our public land ranchers are so important to NCBA. They really take care of a vast majority of the land that our cattle raise on. And what I tell them all is they have all the same problems the rest of us do, plus an additional many problems as they deal with all the different agencies and the permits. What happens on public land sometimes is a bellwether to what happens to private property rights. So I think we always need to be looking at people that like to tell us how to run our farms and our ranches. They've been telling PLC guys how to run their public lands for a long time, and I think it's creeping over into private property rights. So I think as I'm from the East, so it's been not only interesting to find out the problems, but it tells us something about what we need to be looking forward to and watching out for.
With the spring legislative conference now in the books, PLC will now look to this year's annual meeting, which will be held in the Big Sky state of Montana.
Our annual convention this year is in Great Falls, Montana, and that's our big event. Of course, we get a lot more participation at that, and that is the 25th and 28th of September.
The Public Lands Council represents all of the 22,000 public lands ranchers across the West, being a voice for them here in our nation's capital. Reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, I'm Lane Northland.
For more information on regulatory challenges and the issues that impact federal lands and the ranchers that graze there, be sure to visit the website publiclandscouncil.org. Beef exports set all new highs in 2018, which is why trade and market access continues to be a priority issue for America's producers. Kate Maher caught up with one of the top U.S. ag trade officials to get his thoughts on this important topic.
We have the honor today to talk to Greg Dowd, who is the Chief Agricultural Negotiator in the Office of the U.S. Trade Representatives. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. You're a friend of the industry, you're a friend of NCBA. We appreciate all you do. Let's talk about what you're working on. Let's talk USMCA and the importance to beef producers.
Well, you know, your mantra with USMCA was do no harm, and I think we absolutely did that. You know, most of the tariffs are already at zero. Canada and Mexico are huge markets for you, and all of us on beef, and for all of agriculture for that matter. We've got a good deal, and it's a better deal than what we've ever had before. So what's the argument here? We need to ratify this thing. We need to get it up to Capitol Hill, and we're going to do that very quickly here in the next few weeks, get this thing ratified. And the critical piece of this is the start of a pretty robust trade agenda for any administration. I mean, what we're working on here with regard to USMCA, China, Japan, and on down the road here, depending on what the United Kingdom does, etc., we are busy at USTR, and we have got a lot of things going, but the whole thing lynches on getting USMCA ratified. If we don't get that done, then we jam that cow in the chute, and we can't move through with the rest of the agenda that we have.
Excellent analogy. I love it. You mentioned Japan, which is a huge export market for U.S. beef. Where do we stand?
Well, right now, we're the all-China channel all the time. We have spent an unbelievable amount of time working on China, and rightfully so. To give you some perspective on that, and I think this is really even remarkable for me, China last year imported $124 billion in just agricultural products alone. That compares to total U.S. ag exports of 145 billion. So on a good year, we've sent China $20 billion. That's just not enough. We ought to be able to double that when we, if we can get access for our beef, for our poultry, for our wheat, for our corn, for our distillers grains, for our ethanol. We've got a lot of different things that we can sell China that we just don't have access for today. So we're working on that, and as soon as we get done with that, it's on to Japan, because we know that is an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle for us in agriculture. And I will tell you, I'm really anxious. We've got to get to Japan as quickly as we can.
Yeah, a lot of lost opportunity there. What can beef producers do to help support your efforts?
Well, I think the biggest thing right now is, in the classic cattleman fashion, and for that matter all of agriculture, is shoe leather up on Capitol Hill. I think we looked at it the other day. In the last 7 years now, we have 248 new members of the House of Representatives. We've got a lot of people we have to educate on the importance of trade in general, and of course the importance of trade in agriculture. And that's a really important issue to drive home here, is that thousands and thousands of jobs, the critical pieces of this for every rural community, and for that matter every community in America. We've got to get this deal ratified.
Yeah. We appreciate all your help, all your support. We really appreciate your time today, because I know you have some very important meetings to get back to.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Kevin, we'll send it back to you.
One of the most important things cattlemen and women can do is join the fight to protect our industry by becoming a member of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Joining is easy. Just give us a call at 1-866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. Still to come on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, a group of young cattle producers shared their thoughts on the value of the legislative conference. Don't go away. We'll have more right after this.
The elements can be relentless. Make sure they have respiratory protection to match.
When it comes to the beef business, there's no room for gray area. The decisions being made in Washington affect the future of the beef industry, the livelihood of your fellow farmers and ranchers. Your National Cattlemen's Beef Association knows there's what benefits cattlemen and there's what doesn't. To us, it's as clear as black and white. Visit joinncba.org to learn more.
NCBA's legislative conference gives producers a chance to meet with their U.S. representatives and senators about a variety of issues facing the beef industry. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brad Bulla has a look at a group of young cattle producers who were excited to be part of this important event.
As the group from the Indiana Beef Cattle Association walked the halls in Washington, D.C. for NCBA's legislative conference, they were joined by 4 members of the Indiana Junior Beef Cattle Association.
Hats off to our producers and our leadership at Indiana Beef Cattle Association. They've made a commitment to develop leadership among our youth. And we have an Indiana Junior Beef Cattle Association and their board of directors. And our producers have found a way to fund bringing a group of them here. As we all know, it's not inexpensive to bring people to DC. But they found a way, and they are committed to providing this for them each and every year. We were very grateful this year. The Legislative Conference instituted a student rate, and these are all college students. So instead of the normal producer rate, they could come for $150, which is a great value.
The Hoosier contingent spoke with Indiana lawmakers about a variety of issues. The junior members weren't just there to watch, they actually took the lead on most of the meetings.
We had 10 appointments today. We had 8 congressional appointments and 2 Senate appointments. And for the first appointment, the adults led the conversation. And then the other appointments, we let the juniors take over. And it was fun to watch them throughout the day. They were a little hesitant at first, and as they went throughout the day, you could see the confidence growing, and they became a lot more comfortable with the topics and interacting with those legislative people.
This is actually my second year that I've been to DC for the legislative conference. Last year, we just kind of laid low and hung out with the older guys while they met with the congressmen and women and representatives up here. And this year we had the opportunity to converse with our representation on the Hill about beef issues in the industry. It's truly amazing how much the representation values our opinion. And I understand that that's what they're here for, but sometimes when you're seeing them on TV and seeing what's going on, you don't think that they understand what we're going through and how much they truly honor our opinions.
It was definitely a neat experience, and just getting to show them why, what's important to us, explaining why it is important, and just showing them, you know, as a young person, I care about the future of the beef industry and agriculture in general.
It's important that cattle producers of all ages understand the value of NCBA's legislative conference and why it's important to meet with their elected officials about the issues that can impact their operations.
We would encourage other states to do this for the same reason that we do it. All across the country, everybody needs producer leadership. And we do that by taking these young adults and we bring them out here and we give them the experience of talking about the issues that they face, that their parents face on their operations, and it's a good experience. It's really important for you to come here, figure out what this process is, because you're going to have to be involved as you grow up. So you start them young, and so when they get to be adults and they get to be our age, they're much more comfortable with that process.
I think that if given the opportunity, any junior member should take the trip to Washington, D.C. for the legislative conference, as well as the other conferences that they hold, to learn more about what we're doing.
I think the biggest thing I took away from all of this was that there's people here that some are on our side and are absolutely supportive of what we're doing, but there's other people who really need to be informed, and that just made me even more glad I came, spoke my views, and had this opportunity.
Reporting from the Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C., I'm Brad Bullough for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
3 people will have a chance later this year for some hands-on learning at a great cow-calf operation. It's all thanks to NCBA, IX Ranch, and Art of the Cowgirl. Here's Kate Maher with more on this opportunity of a lifetime.
Thanks, Kevin. We're here talking with Tammy Pate. Tammy, you have a really exciting new program to offer this industry. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I would love to. Art of the Cowgirl is providing a fellowship program for emerging artists to learn custom trades in the Western industry, such as boot making, saddle making, rawhide braiding, silversmith, photography, fine art, and horsemanship. And these are fully funded fellowships. We pay the artists to teach. We pay all of the expenses for the recipient to go and learn. And when they leave, they will have finished a piece of art, whether it's a saddle, a pair of spurs, or an experience at a horsemanship retreat. So, and it's all fully funded.
That's really, really exciting. What led you sort of to develop this Art of the Cowgirl program, and why the importance to keeping these Western trades alive?
Well, I developed it because of my love for horsemanship and art and people. And I just have a desire to keep the Western industry alive, because I think that we need to pass these trades down from one generation to the next, or we're going to lose them.
Absolutely, that's so true. It's such a rich, rich heritage. Now, I also understand that NCBA and Art of the Cowgirl are partnering to offer a really exciting opportunity to NCBA members and their children. Can you tell us something about that?
Yes, the IX Ranch in Montana and Rich Roth have graciously awarded Art of the Cowgirl with 3 internships at their ranch for NCBA members or their children. And they are actually a paid internship. They'll get to go, there's 3 a year, and spring, summer, and fall. And it is it's a hands-on experience. And young women or men can apply.
That sounds really exciting, a really great opportunity for somebody young to get involved in the industry and really learn hands-on.
Absolutely, and there's no real requirements other than you understand that it's a lot of hard work and you have a desire to be part of the Western industry and ranching.
What a really great way to get anybody that's passionate about the beef industry involved. Tammy, thank you for bringing your passion to this program, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Kevin, we're going to send it back to you.
If you'd like to learn more about how to apply for one of the internships, visit either ncba.org or artofthecowgirl.com. Still to come, we'll tell you about some great events where you can get hands-on training to improve your cattle care. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Once again, NCBA is offering regional stockmanship and stewardship events across the country that provide hands-on training to improve cattle care. These clinics are led by a great team of experts, and this year, Dean Fish, manager for the Santa Fe Ranch in Arizona, has been added to the lineup. Kate Maher had a chance to talk with Dean about his passion for educating cattle producers.
Thanks, Kevin. We had the fortunate opportunity today to talk to one of the true industry leaders in cattle handling and facilities design, Dean Fish. Dean, you put on a lot of demonstrations across the country every year. What are some of the key topics that you want producers to take away from these demonstrations in terms of cattle handling?
Well, thank you, Kate. We focus on low-stress cattle handling and more importantly, effective stockmanship. You know, now in the beef industry and cattle industry in particular, we're asked to invest a lot in our cattle and our genetics and our vaccines, but stockmanship is truly the one thing that doesn't cost anything to improve, but will benefit and return to that producer multi-times what they invest into it. So we truly believe in that message. We truly believe in the partnership that Beef Quality Assurance has with Merck and the stockmanship and stewardship program. They put on a really, really nice show every year at the annual Cattle Industry Conference. In addition to that, you referenced a tour. We go out throughout the country and bring that to people's backyards so they can learn some of these low-stress handling principles and learn about stockmanship.
And I think today, now more than ever, with the beef industry kind of under the consumer scrutiny that it is, animal welfare is a top concern for a lot of consumers out there. But you made a point. The good news is it probably doesn't take a lot to tweak some of these cattle handling practices or even some of their facilities, maybe.
Absolutely. And, you know, I really try to think about it. I'm not really in the cow-calf business. I raise cow-calves, but I'm truly in the beef business. People want to know where that food comes from, how that animal is raised. And as part of my obligation, my duty is to make sure that I'm doing that in the best way possible. And I think producers need to have that in the back of their mind. So whether they have a nice bud box, whether they have a sweep, a tub, old narrow V crowd, there's different ways to be effective in how they handle those cattle that would be acceptable to the public, but also allow them to be effective in how they work with their animals.
What would maybe one point of advice be that you could give somebody on how to, one thing that they could change to handle their cattle a little bit better?
One of the things that was key for me to learn is to know when to apply pressure, but know when to release that pressure. So that release is so important. That's the reward that cow or that horse get for doing a good job. And so the proper application of that pressure, but also the proper release of that pressure is key. If you go to a Ron Gill or a Kurt Pate session, they'll talk about different types of pressure. We can put a driving pressure, and that's usually our presence in that flight zone where that cow will want to move away. And again, it's usually our presence. We're trying to use minimal or no noise. We're trying to use minimal or no flags, and certainly not hot shots and so forth. But the calmer we are and the better that we're able to apply that pressure with our presence, the better job that we'll do. And again, understanding how we relieve that pressure is also the second key part of that.
And you know, we are all in the beef business, whether you have 10 head of cattle or 10,000 head of cattle. Everybody's situation's a little bit different. In terms of cattle handling facilities and facility designs, what's some things that producers can do that maybe aren't necessarily high cost that can improve some of their facilities?
Right, there's some really neat things, and most important is thinking about where do cows hang up in your facility, and so finding out why that is. Maybe it's a shadow, maybe it's a distraction that they're having, maybe you're pushing too hard or whatever it is, and try to figure out those little things that can make a difference in the way cattle flow. So find out where those little log jams are and then try to correct those. There's some great resources on the Beef Quality Assurance website. There's a wealth wealth of knowledge and resources out there, free of cost for producers to go and look and try to make those little tweaks that'll make it go a little smoother for them.
Excellent. Thanks, Dean, for your time today. Thanks for the expertise that you bring to this industry as well.
Thank you, Kate.
As Dean mentioned, a lot of online resources, and there's some stockmanship and stewardship events coming probably to your part of the country, so be sure to check out our website, stockmanshipandstewardship.org, for those. Get BQA certified. And with that, Kevin, we'll send it back to you.
When we come back, we'll give you an up-close look at an award-winning livestock market in Wisconsin. Plus, we'll check in with the always entertaining Baxter Black. Stay with us.
Run with us on a John Deere 3E Series tractor and add an attachment or two. Because it's time to turn this land and everything on it, as far as the eye can see, into your land. Nothing runs like a Deere. Run with us. Search John Deere 3E Series for more.
How's your production on pasture? Are profits down? Are weight gains down? What are you going to do about it? Do something cost-effective. Do something that will make a difference. To add the first and proven leader in feed-through horn fly control to your cattle rations, ask for it by name, Alticid IGR.
Over the past few weeks, we've been sharing with you some of the recent National Beef Quality Assurance Award winners. These are individuals and operations who demonstrate the best animal care and handling principles on a day-to-day basis. Here's a closer look at Equity Livestock Sales Cooperative, this year's winner of the Marketer Award.
The Equity Cooperative Livestock Sales Association has served the needs of Wisconsin producers since 1922. As the state's largest livestock marketer, Equity has 14 locations and more than 300 employees.
The cooperative, on an annual basis, markets nearly 1 million head of livestock annually. That encompasses all species, cattle, sheep, and hogs.
With that many people and animals to manage, it's important to have procedures to ensure consistent care and safe livestock handling. That's why Equity first developed its own training program that every employee is required to complete before starting at the co-op.
It was because we saw that that need had to be picked up, both on the condition that the animals were being delivered to us and also how we were handling them within our facilities.
Once we were doing our research, we discovered BQA was kind of ahead of the curve. They've already established a lot of the best practices, and we tried to incorporate as many of those as we could into our policy and procedures.
Our beef quality assurance helps us train our individual people in the right things to do and the right way to handle the livestock as they move through our facilities.
We try and be very calm in handling with them. So I think it's not only a benefit to the animals, with not getting them all riled up and having things in a hurry, but it's also a safety component for the employees.
With every employee trained and following BQA principles, the team at Equity is helping to build consumer confidence in Wisconsin's beef industry.
Consumer confidence is one of the main driving forces behind the BQA program, and Equity Co-op has been a really great resource for us to talk to producers about BQA and the importance of BQA.
We've also recently, with industry requirements, asking for BQA certifications in order to bid on certain classes of livestock. We're holding meetings, and we're also encouraging people and getting the word out to utilize the online training.
And they see BQA certification and best practices driving bottom line value for producers.
So it's critical to us, and I believe that we have made a difference in what our producers are receiving for animals, because when they're delivered to the buyers, they're in better shape.
It's the right thing to do. I mean, for the employee, for the producer, for the animals, for the consumers, you know, everybody in the chain benefits from it.
You can begin your training to earn Beef Quality Assurance certification by using the interactive BQA online classroom. The training is tailored to each participant's industry sector and interest. Visit bqa.org for all the details. And with us now is Dr. Kara Wessels of Embryonics. Dr. Wessels, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about your personal background.
Yes, so I have an animal science background. I went to Texas Tech as an animal science student, and while I was a student there, I had an opportunity to get involved in undergraduate research. Started working in Dr. Sam Preen's lab, and he put me on this project studying embryos. At the time, I don't even know if I knew what an embryo was, but I enjoyed the project, and I stayed on to do a PhD at Texas Tech University, which I finished in 2017.
Well, congratulations. And then you've gone on to both invent and found a company called Embryonics, is that right?
Yes.
Tell us what that is.
As a student, I worked hard to develop a new non-invasive embryo selection tool, and after graduation, I felt like it was just stuck in the lab. So I founded this company to help commercialize the technology and get my hard work out into the world and in the hands that it was supposed to help.
So very familiar, obviously, with embryo transfer technology in beef cattle. Specifically, what does your technology do in that process?
Yes, so assisted reproductive technologies have become a mainstream procedure in beef cattle. However, success rates are still not 100%. In fact, on a practical level, they're more like 50% successful in achieving pregnancies. So there's a lot of causes for why those embryo transfers or IVF isn't successful, but it's actually common practice to unknowingly transfer non-viable embryos into recipients. So that's where our technology comes into play. We have a device that can determine the embryo's viability, developmental potential, survival of freezing and thawing, and possibly even sex.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me more, how's that done? I know they typically visually grade the embryos, but what does your technology do to determine how viable one embryo may be versus another?
Yes, so our technology can be used either as a primary means of selecting which embryo to transfer or to supplement the morphological analysis. So we have created a buoyancy chamber. The embryos are dropped through this chamber, which is filled with any culture media that the user prefers, and we time the embryo's rate of descent. Based on the rate of descent, we can tell these characteristics about the embryo. It takes less than a minute, can be performed at any embryo transfer location, and you can feel more confident that we're putting the healthiest embryos into the recipients.
That is exciting technology. So tell me, is it only for cattle, or are you doing it with other species?
So far, we've tested on mouse, cattle, and sheep embryos. However, for all intents and purposes, I believe the technology could work on any mammalian embryo.
That's fascinating technology, Dr. Wessels. And if you'd like more information on this technology, go to embryonics.com. Still ahead, it's time for a visit with our good friend, Baxter Black. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
When you're raising cattle, you might have to solve a dozen problems before you even get through your first cup of coffee. Still, one thing we don't ever have to worry about is implant performance.
We use Synvex Swingrass. It's the only true 200-day trim-blown acetate implant for grazing steers and heifers.
And you can actually drink this before it gets cold. Ooh, that'll put hair on your chest.
We know you're up before the dawn because the cattle rise before the sun. And you spend long hours in the saddle because the herd isn't always over the next rise. And you care for the land because you know it takes care of your family. And we know you do great work. And it's time to tell that story to the marketplace. IMI Global is here to help you do just that.
At Leachman Cattle, we're committed to building more profitable cattle. As a third-generation seed stock producer, our family has been in this business for over 80 years. Today, we have the best technology ever to build more profitable cattle. Our dollar profit index is a leader in the industry to help you balance all the traits that drive your bottom line. Give us a call or go to www.leachman to learn more.
He was a good Dakota rancher with that stubborn Norwegian determination that allowed him to break even in the unforgiving country north of Mobridge. He raised 4 children on the ranch, and they were his cowboys, farm hands, truck drivers, fence builders, and horse breakers. They also learned to cook and sew, can fruit, butcher, and do laundry. See, they were all girls. Anyway, the daughters of our good Dakota rancher grew up, and they all married men with no cow knowledge or cowboy skills. They even made poor chore boys. But all the girls lived close enough to home to be able to come and help Dad during the branding and the shipping and the fall work. Last October, fate decreed that 3 of the 4 girls were going to be unable to attend the gather. The burden fell on Katrina and her dude husband, Norval, a merchant and Lewis and Clark reenactor. "Which horse do you want to ride?" asked Katrina. "Well, none of them, really," said Norval. "Well, then see if you can catch Rocket," she said. 30 minutes later, after Rocket had stepped on, bit, and exhausted Norval, he was saddled. "Will you take the creek?" Katrina instructed Nor. "I'll ride the ridge." Well, when they finished their circles and met, Norval admitted that he had seen 2 other cows, but they wouldn't stay with the bunch, so he just left them. "Well, you got to go back and get those 2, she said. "I'll push in what we've gathered." 2 long hours passed before Norval straggled in with the delinquent cows. Katrina and her dad waited by the gate and watched Norval's arrival. He looked like he had been eaten by Babe the Blue Ox and regurgitated. His hat was gone, his nose was bloody, both his eyes were the color of prune juice, and his right sleeve fluttered in tatters. "I ran into a tree," was his only explanation, as he rode by, eyes front. Katrina explained to her dad how she'd sent Norval back for the 2 cows, and he shook his head. "You should know by now," he said. "Never send a boy to do a woman's job." This is Baxter Black from out there.
What does it mean to be an American cattleman? It means you have what it takes where it counts, on the inside. At Ritchie, we understand that. It's what's on the inside that defines us. We share the same values: ingenuity, commitment, sense of pride. These are the values that built this country. They're the values that built this company. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattlemen since 1921.
Saddle up and make your way to Denver, Colorado for the 2019 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting. This is your chance to stay up to date on beef industry trends and policies. Meet with industry leaders and your fellow cattlemen and women. Plus, you'll get insights on hot topics at the Issues Forums. Mark your calendar for the 2019 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, July 29th to August 1st in Denver. Details at ncba.org.
One of the highlights of the Cattle Industry Convention is the Best of Beef Awards ceremony, honoring a variety of individuals and companies that are doing outstanding things in the beef industry. Brian Baxter has a look at one of this year's winners.
Raising stocker cattle is not for the faint of heart. The calves most often come from different sources, and there can be a lot of work to keep them healthy and growing. Those are challenges Ted Parker has overcome many times, and it's partly why he was the winner of the Beef Magazine National Stocker Award.
Great honor, and I've been blessed to have a great family and great people around me and great employees. And this was quite an honor, and I appreciate everything everybody's done.
Parker was not raised in the cattle business, so he started his own stocker operation in Mississippi more than 40 years ago.
Everybody in this industry works hard to do what they love. You got to love it or you won't do it, because it's a lot of hours, a lot of work.
Parker says the key is to buy the cattle light and get them big. He relies on ryegrass to put economical gain on his stocker cattle. He's also a believer in the value of being a member of NCBA.
I'm an NCBA member because they support all of us out there, and we need to support NCBA. NCBA has helped the cattle industry, and they fight for us every day, and we need their help, and everyone should be a member to support the industry and support what we do, because they work for everyone every day.
From the 2019 Best of Beef Breakfast, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We're wrapping up this episode of Cattlemen to Cattlemen with one more look at Hats on the Hill and some of the folks who gathered at the 2019 NCBA Legislative Conference. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.